Chapter 13. Attack of the Giant Animals. Brobdingnag, I learned, formed a peninsula 6,000 miles long and 5,000 miles wide off the western coast of America. It's an area between California and Japan, which British mapmakers have declared contain nothing but ocean. Down the length of the peninsula runs a ridge of mountains 30 miles high, with volcanoes at the top. The kingdom contains 51 cities, 100 walled towns, and even more small villages. The capital, Lurblrud, with 80,000 houses, is divided in two by a river running through it. The palace has many buildings spread over 7 miles around, and its rooms are 240 feet high. I got to see the city in a coach that was given to Glumdalclitch for her own use. Although I was always carried about in my box, my little nurse often took me out to see the houses and people and to let the people see me and talk to me. On those occasions when I accompanied the king and queen on a royal visit on horseback, my box was buckled to the waist of a trusted servant. A cushion was placed below the box and a hammock hung inside it so I wouldn't be tossed about by the galloping of a 60-foot high horse. The queen appreciated my interest in the palace library and gave me permission to borrow any books I chose. She had her carpenter build a kind of moving ladder for me in Glumdalclitch's room. It was 25 feet high, with steps 50 feet across. The book I chose to read was propped up against the wall, and the ladder propped up against the open page. I would climb up the ladder and, starting at the top of the left page, walk to the right, then back to the left, slowly going down the ladder until I came to the bottom of the page. I repeated the same procedure on the facing page, then turned to the next one, using both my hands on the thick, stiff paper that measured 20 feet across. The queen always enjoyed hearing me talk of my sea voyages, and she asked me one day, "Would you like to do some sailing or rowing, perhaps, for pleasure or exercise?" "Certainly, your majesty," I replied, "but there is no vessel small enough in Brobdingnag for me to manage." "If you design one, I'll have it built and provide a place for you to sail it in." 10 days later I had a boat large enough to hold me and 8 of my friends, if I had any of them here with me. It had a mast and sails and several oars. The boat was put into a wooden trough 300 feet long, 50 feet wide, and 8 feet deep. I often rowed in it as the queen and her ladies sat watching and praising my skills in maneuvering the vessel. When I wanted to sail, they used their fans to create strong winds, or ordered their pages to blow on my sails to move them with their breath. While this pastime gave me much pleasure, it also was the cause of an accident that almost cost me my life. One of the servants, whose job it was to refill my trough with fresh water every 3 days, didn't notice a frog slip out of his pail and into the trough. Once my boat and I were placed in the trough, the frog hopped up onto the boat and began hopping backwards and forwards over me. This tilted the boat dangerously and covered me with its disgusting slime. Seeing this attack, Glumdalclitch ran to rescue me, but I held her off, preferring to beat back my attacker with my oars, which I managed to do successfully. But a frog was not the greatest danger I faced in Brobdingnag. That came from a monkey that belonged to a palace worker. It happened one day when my little nurse went off on a visit to her family. She had locked me safely in her room, but since the weather was very warm and she wanted me to have enough air, she left her bedroom window open, along with those in my little box. I was sitting quietly at my table when I heard and saw a monkey the size of an elephant bounce the window and begin to leap up and down around the room. When he saw my box, he leapt towards it for a closer look, peeking curiously into my door and all the windows. I jumped up from the table and ran to the farthest corner of the room. I wasn't thinking too clearly, or else I would have had the sense to hide under my bed. When the monkey spied me, he began chattering and grinning, then reached his paw inside the door and grabbed me. Although he was squeezing me very hard, he didn't seem to want to harm me. Instead, he cradled me in his right front foot, just the way a mother cradles an infant in her arms when she's about to nurse, and began stroking my face very gently. Suddenly the bedroom door opened, and Glumdalclitch took a step inside the room, then froze. She let out a horrible scream as she ran towards us. The frightened monkey leapt up to the window and out onto the ledge. Walking on 3 legs and holding me in his fourth, he climbed up to the roof. By now, my little nurse's screams had sent the entire palace into an uproar. Servants ran for ladders, while hundreds of Brobdingnagians shouted from the courtyard below. Meanwhile, the monkey sat calmly at the edge of the roof, still holding me in one paw and cramming some dirt and food into my mouth with another. But when he saw men climbing up ladders and surrounding him, the monkey decided to make his escape. Lucky for me, he dropped me onto a roof tile before he leapt away. I sat there for a while, fearing I'd be blown off the roof by the wind or that I'd get dizzy and fall. But a brave footman reached me before that happened and carried me down safely in the pocket of his shirt. I was nearly choked with the filthy garbage the monkey had tried to stuff down my throat, but my dear nurse picked it out of my mouth with a needle and gave me a drink. My body was weak and bruised from the monkey's squeezing, and I had to stay in bed for 2 weeks until my strength returned. The king and queen came to visit me often during those weeks and assured me that they had issued orders banning all monkeys from the palace and its surrounding gardens.